How are we doing today, guys? Sam here out at Anglers. We're really excited for everybody to come out for a big Rockfish kickoff and pen sales event this weekend. I'm joined by Doug Collison and Charlie Sisson with Backdraft Charters. These two have been fishing together for a very, very long time and doing a great job in trolling for the Rockfish. So we're really excited to have them here today, and they're going to talk all about what you guys need for trolling out there on the bay. So Doug, Charlie, tell me a little bit about yourselves, and then we'll get into some fishing.
Well, I've been in it about 30 years. Picked up Doug probably 5 or 6 years ago. But about a couple months ago, I had the second happiest day of my life when I saw Doug the boat. So I'm getting a little older, and then do 2 a days and 7 days a week, getting a little older. So Doug's taking over the business. He's a great guy. He's really knowledgeable. And as you'll see as we go through the seminar here, he knows his stuff. Been around a long time, fishing Middle Bay area from anywhere from Chesapeake Beach down to Solomon, all the way up above the Bay Bridge. So we're going to give you some tips, and we'll really emphasize certain points of the talk that I really think you need to take heavy concentration on. Ready? Yep. Okay. We'll start out, we'll tell you a little bit about what we're using for tackle. Just go ahead. Now, we're a charter boat, and we have a lot of people that fish with us that aren't very experienced, so we have a little bit heavier tackle than what the average guy on his own private boat needs to use. For example, our braid on our rods is 80-pound power braid. That's just our brand that we like. You can pick your brand, they're all good. You know, there's some, everybody has their own opinion. Everybody picks their own. We also use on our leader, we use 80-pound monofilament. You can get it as low as 50 pounds. We used to use 50 pounds. A lot of people will use 50 pounds in the spring. And if you have people that are knowledgeable and don't try to work the rod too hard and all that, you can get away with that with no problem. The problem with us is a lot of our people are inexperienced, and all they want to do is jerk on the rod and all that kind of stuff. So the extra strength helps us out with that. We have Akumas on our rods, but I know for a fact that the store has got a special on pen today. We have some real nice trolling rigs inside, self-level lines like we have on these, and they also carry the Akumas. The pen's got a super sale going on inside today, so you might want to come by and see that. We like a little bit bigger reel, They last a long time. I do a lot of fishing, so there's a lot of stress and work on our rods. In fact, we just had this one redone after 20 years, so we can be pretty tough on the equipment. That's pretty much it. It's on our planer boards. I don't know how many guys are pulling planer boards. Anybody in the crowd here pulling planer boards? Okay. Has anybody ever seen me before? You have? Okay, good. And you can leave, you know, with my letter. No, I'm kidding. On our planer boards, we like to use like a 20 or 30 pound class rod, maybe a little bit lighter than what we use for what we call the boat rods, the ones that are mounted on the boat. Now, Doug and I will pull on one side, we'll pull a lot of umbrellas. Doug's an umbrella man. I'm on the other side of the boat on the planer board with double rigs and a few single rigs. In the springtime early, if it's a tough bite, I think the double rigs and the single rigs work just a little bit better. As the summer goes and the fish get a little smaller, the umbrellas seem to take over. But we have an argument every year. That's why when he first started with me, I said, Doug, you got that side of the boat, and I got this side of the boat, and you will put my side out the way I want it. Because I was the captain. Now it's going to be a little different.
Now you're going to do it the way I want it.
So real quick, guys, so we mentioned the braided line on there. Is that for the longevity that you're getting with the charter boat stuff, or does that provide any advantages to you guys as far as trolling goes?
So, on my personal, we used to run a lot of mono, especially out on the boards. I'm going to set this down. I think one thing that braid does, it pulls true, especially on a rough day. You know, I mean, a lot of private guys don't go out probably fish the days that we fish because, you know, we got to sometimes, but I think the braid pulls a lot truer, and two, the braid doesn't get such a big belly in it. You know, the guys that pull planer boards, you get one all the way down on the end. How often does a clip get wrapped around the end of the planer board? You know what I mean? So And the other thing about braid too, it don't have a, it's got hardly any stretch to it. So when you get that bite, that hook's in there. It's not like, right. Because, you got your board out, it's down on the clip, that line has to come all the way tight to the rod before that hook really digs into him, So with that braid, that kind of takes that a little bit away. So
Great points there, guys.
The other thing is it's a little truer to depth with the braid because the mono has a tendency to float up a little bit compared to what the braid does. And we use the same thing on our boat rods. Usually on our boat rods we're pulling out heavy lead and umbrellas. That's why we use a little bit stiffer rod in the 30 to 50 pound class. So it's a little bit stiffer rod, but you got a lot more weight when you're dragging and trolling through the water. The weight with those umbrellas and the drag and all that stuff, you really need a little bit stiffer rod. But we're not usually using a lot of weight out on the board rods. And I will mention our board rods, in the springtime for the trophy season, we don't put any inline sinkers in our baits at all. If you want to heavy up, you might use a bait that's 6 or an 8 ounce. And we'll always separate them on a double rig. We'll separate them by at least a minimum of 2 ounces. So if the lighter bait's a 2 or a 4, we might have a 4 or a 6 on the bottom rig. And our rigs, and we'll pull one out and show it to you. We'll stretch it out for you.
So I'll say one thing about the lures, the ounces of or the weights of the lures he was talking about. We used to be able to start in April, and that water was a little colder, so we used to use them heavier baits, But as that water gets warm, then fish get more active, get more aggressive. We definitely lighten our baits up. We can start out, when we start in April, we start everything with, 6, 8, even 10 sometimes. Now, start in May and the water's warm, and fish are a little more aggressive. So now, we're running 6, even 2 sometimes. So it just depends on what the water temperature is and, different things. But as that water definitely gets warmer, you definitely want to start lightening your baits up. In the springtime, and I think Charlie and the guys will agree with me, I think 90% of your bites, maybe not 90, but I'd say at least 75% of your bites are going to come in that top 20-foot water column in the springtime.
Awesome. Great stuff there.
Another thing, just an old war story from an old horse that's been out here for 30 years. We had a guy came up from the south that fished these big rockfish a lot of times later in the fall. And in the fall, they were deeper in the water column. They were always down, and they had to put a lot of weight to get the baits down in the water so they could get to the fish. Well, he would come up to fish the tournaments in the springtime, and he couldn't get a bite, and he couldn't figure out why. And I was talking to him at a show one day, and he said, I don't know what it is. He said, I come up there, I can catch him down here in the fall, but I can't catch him in the spring. And I asked him how far back behind the board was he fishing the baits and all that kind of stuff. He was like 100, 125 feet behind the boards. He had 10, 15, 20 ounces of lead on him, all this other stuff. I said, you're fishing too deep. The next weekend he called me back. He said he went out and he lightened everything up and got away from it. Sure enough, he caught a few fish. So they're in the upper, like Doug said, upper 20, 25 foot and up. They're moving. They're on the move. They're coming in to spawn, and then they're leaving to go. So they're going to be moving. Most of the time they're going to be in a channel edge and just inside the channel. Doug and I in the springtime, usually we'll come outside the docks and get about 20 or 40 foot of water. And we'll put the boards out. We'll start putting our lines out, and we walk all the way out to 50, 60 foot channel edge and see how it goes. We'll make a mark. Let me get into that a little bit later. Let's finish with the baits and stuff, and we'll talk about the speed control and all that stuff. Now, Doug and I like baits with big glass eyes. We don't like tapeworm eyes. We don't like little tiny eyes. We want big eyes. Why do we like the big eyes? To me, it's a reflection of the sun. The sun penetrates the water, those eyes will glow a little bit. You'll have the working of the tail in the back. Colors. We like baits that have 2 different colors on them. You see a lot of our baits are like the chugger heads. The one I used to like, I thought was the favorite one I ever had was the ruby lip style. Okay, the base of the body would be one color, then the mouth, or the mouth of these, or on the bullet head you put a dot underneath, like it could be white, you could put a red, it could be black, you could put a yellow or an orange. You can mix the colors up. I believe that pretty pretty wholeheartedly that when you're trolling in the springtime, if you pull it in front of them, you're going to get it. They're few and far between. You have to have super patience to catch them. I know guys that have fished this water like me for 30 years, and we're all struggling in the trophy season. But in years past, pre-moratorium and all that, that's the way it was. If you caught 1 or 2 fish a day, and if you catch 1 or 2 fish a day now, you're doing all right. You're one of the top dogs.
I can tell you another important thing about your baits. And Charlie laughs at me, and a lot of people at these seminars laugh at me, but I'm going to swear to you, that right there is your best friend in the springtime. And he'll tell you too, if we go an hour without getting a bite, check your baits. A lot of times them jellyfish will get on these baits, and that hair won't sit just right, and that bubble trail will get off, and they'll be dirty. I'm a firm believer, and again, people laugh at me, but I'm a firm believer, your clean baits will get you more bites. All right. Like I said, we go an hour, and I'm not saying every hour you gotta pull your whole rig up, but there's been days, we'll be catching, then all of a sudden, nothing. And then, a boat will pass you, and he'll have a fish on, and another boat will pass you, and you're like, all right, what's going on here? So then you got to be conscious about, what's wrong, what's going on here, what changed? And 90% of the time, it's going to be your baits are dirty.
So one more quick thing as far as the baits go. We're doing almost all 9-inch or 12-inch baits in the spring months, right?
9 and 12s, we do pull some 6s because, elephants do eat peanuts. Don't think to catch a big fish, you got to have a big giant bait. One of the main things I like about the 12-inch, if you compare it to a 9, the tail's just a little bit bigger. So, you want every advantage you can get. Obviously, a 12-inch, shad, he's got a little more of a chance to miss the hook. So I wish I had one I'd show you, but what I normally do, if we're going to run 12 inches, I'll cut the head of the bait down to make it a 9-inch to have that bigger tail. That head's going to be tucked up under here, and he gets that close to see it, it should be too late for him anyway,
Yeah, so great point there, great tip.
To be perfectly honest with you, I don't think we have a 12-inch shad on the boat.
Oh, yes, we do. There's a lot of stuff goes on the
Like
boat.
I said, he hides stuff from me. I sent him to the tackle store one day. He said, we need a few baits. I sent him to the tackle store. I said, can you get a few baits, whatever you need? $300 later, he comes back with a box full of them and not knowing me off them.
But I got everything I need now.
So, you got to watch your mates sometimes when you send them with the lot. You got to be specific sometimes.
Typically, when we first start out in the spring, like Charlie said, we'll run out the 30, 35 foot, we'll put our boards out. I'm going to tell you a little trick that I've learned over the years, especially early in the morning. When we run out, I'll put the boards out, and before I start putting any board rods or any board lines out, anything on the planer boards, I'll set 3 boat rods. I use I don't have it with me, but I use a cut down umbrella with a 5-ounce bait, and one of my favorites is a single bait here, single 5-ounce bait. I run it right down the center at 200 feet. And then I do the same thing on the other corner with another umbrella at about 160 feet. So, 140, 200, 160. And I cannot tell you how many times, especially early in the morning, before we get the board set, we got one of them long rods. Just get something fishing. Why? It takes you time to get your boards out. That first couple half hour in the morning, that's key. Get something fishing for sure.
All right, while he's talking about the length, that's the 3 boat rods that are mounted on the back of the boat, and they're out of the way. They're back there far enough. We can do anything we want with the boards. They're out in the way. We're not going to get tangled up. Our board rods, one side we'll run them odd numbers, the other side we'll run them even numbers. So Doug might have from 10, we call them bars, roughly 100 foot of bar. We follow that level line.
Does everybody know what a bar is?
3,
All right,
4, 5. Each trip across the bar, not all the way and back, both ways. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if Doug says he's got them out 10 bars, that's 100 foot behind the board. If he says 20 feet, it's only 20 feet behind the board. And then that's where we mount. So we might do like 7 or 8 at the end of the board in the spring. We might do 2 of them at 6, 2 at 7, and 2 at 8. We might move anywhere from 8 all the way into 2. And we'll have 10 or 11 on each side.
Now,
And when we say 2, that's usually a slick, calm day. If it's choppy, you got to be a little deeper. But a slick, calm day, you can actually put that closest one to the boat, because that's the one that's you want the shortest out. That thing, you'll see the fish come up and take it. It'll be that close to the surface. It'll roll right through. So calm days, you can shorten them in a little bit. But somewhere between 8, most of the time I'd say between 8 and 2, all the way up the line. Now you can put 2 8s, 2 7s, 2 6s, an 8, a 7, a 6, 2 5, a 2 4. And we do the same thing on the other side.
Well, like Charlie's saying, that's very true. But I tell you something else that we do, or at least I do. I keep a notebook. We'll go out the first thing, like he says, we'll set evens and odds. Well, all of a sudden, say 70 feet, 7 bars is getting a bite. Write that down, first bite, 7 bars. Then all of a sudden, you get another one at 7, 70 feet, you got another bite, okay? But now that's your 2 7s. Now let's say you get a couple at 5, 50 feet, Well, tomorrow morning, or this afternoon when we come back out, guess what? That whole side is going to be 5 and 7, So don't be afraid to mess with it, play with it to see, get it dialed in. Like Charlie said too, springtime's been tough, so it's harder and harder to get it dialed in. But in the springtime, every advantage that you can get, you need to take, because it will make you a lot more successful in doing so.
So one thing about the bars they're talking about for people at home, it's a level line on your reel. So Doug's gonna pull one up here. Typically speaking, now of course it depends on the reels, but every time.
So when we say a bar, here, pull that up. When we say a bar, all right, so let's start it this way, all right, so now I'm gonna put this out, 10 feet. I'm gonna let that line out, and that line's gonna run across. Of course, it's gonna go out faster when, there you go. All right, so that's 10 feet right there. Now it's gonna go back. All right, that's 20 feet when it goes over and back. Not over and across, just one. That's 10, So now, some reels are different. Not all of them are going to be roughly 10 feet. Like I know the Penn Squalls, I think they are. I think they're roughly 15. But it gets you in the ballpark and it's close enough.
Another thing you can do if you don't have a level line on your trolling outfit is just go out to the yard and you can draw Sharpie marks, especially with the braid, and it does hold them quite a while with the mono. At 10-foot increments, you can get a good idea about it. So there's a lot of options. So even a line counter would be phenomenal to have.
I'll tell you another little trick that we do. We like, for the guys that don't have the level lines, you can measure it out. You can take thread or like tying thread or even yarn. I've seen you tie it on there real tight, and that's your mark. So you let them out to your mark. The only problem doing it that way is that if you break it off, you got to remember to mark it out again, because then you're going to be off a little bit. But again, not rocket science, we're fishing, so I'm sure it's close enough, but just something to think about.
Yeah, we also do carry a bunch of different line counter options from Berkeley today, and those are going to be discounted.
Absolutely. So let's talk about our corn rod setup. One of the main things that I like to do, or one of the main things that I see, is that a lot of people like to take their hooks and they put it in the ceramic of the rod like that, okay? And then all of a sudden, you're breaking fish off and you can't figure out why. That hook will crack that ceramic in that eye. So you should always hook them on the outside of your guides. All right, that's one. Now, when we make our tandems, everything's a little different, but ours are roughly 20 feet and about 12 feet. Okay, so mine's 3 arm lengths and then 1.5. And for our rods, it rolls up perfect every time. All right. So in the morning, I can just take my light bait off, drop it in the water, and it's going to unwind. All right. That's your light. Now my heavy bait's going to come off. Yeah. There you go. Just walk out. Just walking over there. That's going to be our tandem rig. Alright. Now to reel it up, I'll take the short one first. Or to roll it up rather. to the bottom, crank it all the way to the 3-way, and then I use the handle to tighten it up, and then we'll just wrap this one the same way. A lot easier when the baits are dragging in the water. Yeah.
Doug, is that your first time doing that?
Yeah. This year anyway. Yeah. But that's how it goes.
Awesome.
That way it's so easy to put it right back out the next morning. You take that long one, you drop it in the water, it takes it out, it's out of the way.
Now our
then
single
you take
baits,
that short one off and drop it. It falls right down.
our single baits are nothing more than just a leader. I personally do not like using more terminal tackle than I absolutely have to, so I just do a wind-on leader with the single baits. Just simple, at the end, you wind it up or you want to check it, hook it on the eye, crank it up, and you're done. All right.
And I assume that's 80-pound, just like you do on most of the tandem rigs?
Yes, sir. Yep. Now our umbrellas, this is just the standard one umbrella, one rig umbrella. Same thing, at the end of the day, when you're done, just hook them up, I'll tell you one little trick about the umbrellas though. Hold it for a second. I see some guys got the baits way down here, some guys got them real short, but if you take it, if I were to unclip this leader would be the length of this arm here. See? Be the length of that umbrella arm. So whether you're running a single or a tandem umbrella, tandem bait on your umbrellas, they won't tangle up and be perfect every time. And then too, they're all matched, I'm kind of, not that really matters, but I'm kind of big on that. I like everything to be just so. Now, one thing I like about the umbrellas in the springtime, especially when the jellyfish get bad, that cage, or the basket as we call them, will catch a lot of them jellyfish, and it won't let your baits get dirty as often. You still got to check them. But one thing you can do if that happens, and you're seeing your baits are getting real dirty all the time, you shorten it up. Shorten that leader up. So it tucks in behind that umbrella frame real good. And it makes a difference. Umbrellas are my favorite. Like Charlie said, he likes tandem and singles, but I like stuff that makes a lot of noise and has a big presence. 90% of our umbrellas are like this. I do have three with double baits on them. And I'm gonna tell you, you want to see a grown man cry? Get 2 40-inch fish on one umbrella. I'm gonna tell you, we've had it happen. It's pretty wild. But the one thing I like about this is when you do get that one bite, that fish takes it, and this umbrella will trip. So instead of pulling the umbrella like this and all the weight, that you're gonna be pulling it in from the side. You're just gonna be fighting the fish. You're not gonna have the weight of the cage. So kind of a little.
Takes a lot of the drag.
Now, when I double rig them like this, no heavier than 3-ounce baits. All right, so these are 3s actually. Sometimes I'll use 2s, but 3s are mainly the way to go.
The thing about when you double rig them, they have to be the same weight.
And
otherwise it'll tilt your flat.
And again, the leaders are the length of the umbrella arm. It's just a quick, simple way to remember how long you got to make it.
One thing to talk about, at least with umbrella rigs, is they have a lot of drag on them, so it is a little bit tough on the gear, but it also can help you out in the spring months when we're trying to target that top 20% of the depth. We don't have to add a ton of weight to stuff because these aren't getting too far down, but they're getting down to that depth we need them to be in.
One other thing, Sam, about the umbrella rigs that, like you said, they have a lot of drag. You got to remember to loosen your drags up just a little bit. You don't want them too loose because as the boat's going up and down, you're going to be peeling line out. But when you get that strike, you got that added weight of that umbrella, you got to make sure it's loose enough that he can run it off the board or off the boat or whatever, where he's not going to come tight to it and break your line off. I don't, like we said earlier, some people use 50-pound, you know what I mean? And I've had a couple even break off, come off the board, get hung up on the board or something. So, that's kind of disheartening, but it does happen. But if you set your drag right, you shouldn't have a problem.
Awesome.
Okay, we got some people here. Do you have any questions while we're here? We'll take them. Yes, sir.
We're getting
to that. We're going to cover that very heavily. If you don't take anything else away from this seminar today, you don't take anything that everybody has their own way of rigging things. This is the way Doug and I do it. We're not saying we're right, we're wrong, but it works for us. So when you go to these seminars and you fish yourself and you've got a system going on that's working for you, you don't need to worry about what we do. But if you take nothing else away from this seminar, we want you to take away the speed, how to get your speed right. Because the more you're in the speed zone, the more fish you're going to get. And we're going to cover it pretty thoroughly because it's the most important part of the whole deal. You can have twice the leader we had. When I first got started, it was double the length of the leaders that we use now. We shortened them up, but it's not made a difference. It really has not made a difference. Does anybody have any questions about the gear or tackle or anything? Yes, sir.
I missed the leader length and size of the
Leader length was...
I use 3 arm lengths, about 20 feet. Yeah.
3 arm lengths on the wall.
No weight on the singles. In the springtime, we don't run any weights at all. On the boards, on the boat rods, that's different. We'll run, we got them up. We run 32 ounces a lot. 32 ounces a lot. If it seemed to be down a little bit deeper, the bait's a little bit deeper, we'll go as heavy as 48. But we don't typically.
That's more.
That's more like a fall thing.
Fall thing.
But our typical boat rod setup, the 3 across the back don't have any weight on them at all. They're kind of like the waybacks, as it's called. We run a 32 up in the front. The other side we'll run like a 28 up there, and then we'll run 16s and we like 20 ounces too. Okay.
Springtime, we don't go below. The spring over 2024.
Not 32.
Yeah, we will run a 32 once in a while just to have something deep.
Now,
you never know.
I will tell you, the deep rods up front, there are years and there are days where it's good, that they really catch you, get 1 or 2, 3 bites on them, whatever. But I will tell you, they don't get bites very often, but when they do, it's normally a bigger fish.
Okay.
Get into speed.
Yeah, we're getting into speed. Oh, that's good. Okay, let's get into the speed. Does everybody understand? Everybody calls me, people, my customers call me. The one thing they want to know, how fast were you going? 3.0, 3.2? You're looking at a GPS. That's like driving your car down the street. If you're doing 50 miles an hour, in an hour you're going to be 50 miles. On the water, if your GPS is showing you 3 knots, wherever you're going, you're going to be in 3 knots. You're going to be there in an hour, you're going to be 3 miles. But if you're pushing into a tide, and the tide's running 2 knots out, you're going up the bay and you're doing 3 knots, your lures are actually fishing at 5.
You got to fish them at water speed.
So you got GPS speed, which is speed over ground, and you got water speed. Your lures work at water speed. Your lures don't work at ground speed. So every time you change direction, even a little bit, it's going to change the speed. It's going to change the way that lure works. Okay, how can we keep our speed? There's several ways. First and foremost, when you put your rods out, we put it somewhere in the neighborhood. You look at the GPS, and it'll be somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 knots. By the first couple of rods we put out, you can pretty much tell how the boat's moving. Of course, we do it a lot, so you know what we're talking about. If we get a bite, the first thing we look at is the GPS speed, then we look at the direction, and I usually check my speed rod, which is my deep rod on the starboard side of my boat. I have a left-hand steer boat. So I'll look at my short rod, and I'll look at the angle of that line dropping back behind the boat. If it's about a 45-degree angle, and on my boat, I know where it cuts my boat. My stanchion comes down from my canopy, and right at the bottom of the stanchion where it meets the collar board, there's a handrail that's got a little square there. Well, if that short rod is put out with 20 ounces of lead, about 40 to 50 feet, it cuts that square right in half. And that's true water speed. If that line is cutting that square, you know your speed is correct. Of course, the best proof of that speed being correct is a bite or a hookup, or you catch one. That's why the first thing you look at is that rod, GPS. It takes you a fraction of a second. Don't get so excited you got a fish on, you run away from the dashboard and you're worried about catching that fish, but you didn't check any of the variables. The other one is some of the smaller boats have a paddle wheel on their transducer. I don't like those so much, but it's something to look at. The reason being they can get clogged up with debris, they don't spin freely, you know, that kind of stuff. But it's something you can check. And last but not least, old school way was a 21 Tony run off the back of the boat with like 2 or 3 ounces of lead on it, and you watch the way the tip would move on the rod. If you were going fast, it would be jumping real fast. If you went too slow, it would just be quivering. But when you hit it right, it would take about 3 or 4 dumps, and then it would pull down and pop back up. Bing, 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 pop. You think you get a bite, but it's not. That was another way to do it. It was a 21 Tony with a couple ounces of lead. But that's the only rod to check. And Doug knows when he gets on my boat, that front rod on that starboard side is set the same way every time. Now, if for some reason the other side's catching and it's set a little different, I'll get my speed right, I'll be moving, then I'll tell Doug, drop that short one back 2 more bars. But then after he drops it back, you note where it falls on the boat, what the angle is on that rod. Roughly speaking, it's about a 45-degree angle coming off the tip of your rod, cutting back to the water. And the longer you keep that speed correct, the better you're going to be. You got to study it, because I get to running my mouth with the party.
Talking on his phone.
Talking on the phone, whatever happens. And I'll make a tight turn, or it'll drop. But Doug will yell at me, "Get it up! Get it up!" You know. So as you turn, you make a turn just a little bit. If you change across the tide, generally speaking, when I first start out, we'll go across the tide. We'll go pretty much east to west. And we'll feel it out and see what we hit and when we hit it. If I hit an area, especially in the springtime, I won't leave that area. I'll make big circles around there for hours. Some guys will straight line troll, especially guys that have their autopilot. They'll put it on autopilot, just keep on going. But if I catch a fish in an area, I'm going to stay there. You'd be surprised how often we'll pick up a second or a third one and they've caught one all day long. I'm not saying I'm out fishing, sometimes they'll catch. But I'm pretty patient when it comes to staying in an area. Now when I say in an area, I'll get a bite. I might go a mile below, a mile above. I'm not going to be so tight. I'm not going to be in a quarter-mile area. I'm going to move a little bit, especially if I don't get right after a while.
And the other thing is too, in the springtime, guys, fish the open water. Don't try to fish where he's fishing or where you're fishing. You know, get out in an open space of water where you can work. Because I can't tell you how many times we've been going along, especially with your boards out when, you know, ours are 200 foot, so we're 400 feet wide, and we'll get a bite, and I swear to you, it'd take 3.5, 4 miles for us to turn around and be able to get back, you know. So that open water, you know, the fish aren't disturbed, the water's not, you know, everything's more calm, you're more than likely, that's where you're going to get your bite.
So a quick question there on planer length. So for that average wreck guy that's trolling 6 to 12 rods, how long are you going to make those play?
On average wreck guy, I would say 100, maybe a 125. You know, we run typically anywhere from 24 to 28 rods off our boards, so our boards are obviously a little bigger. Now in the summertime, when we're still trolling for the smaller fish, we will cut that down to about 100, 125 feet. Awesome.
The thing is, when you're out there trolling in the springtime, figure every boat out there, including little boats, big boats, whatever, figure each of them are 400 feet wide. Give yourself plenty of room. Look up in front of you all the time. Look and see what the pattern of the other boats are and see if you can find a lane that you can cut. But I promise you, if you go out there in the spring this year, and somebody puts a report out that they were breaking or they caught a fish at buoy 86. When you go to 86, there's going to be 300 boats around 86. Then you look down to 82, 84, and 82 down to the Poplar, and there ain't a soul in between the buoys. People go out, people on private boats, for some reason, they're not sure where they are, or they think they have to be at the same spot where there's fish on. You look between the buoys, you got more open water between the buoys than you'll ever have by the buoy. So if somebody tells you they're catching them at 86, go halfway between 84 and 86, or 86 and 88. Go between them. And like I said, we all know, you should know the rules of the road if you're out there on the water. We know that if I approach a boat to the port side of that boat, I'm supposed to give way to it. But if I have a boat on my left and a boat on my right, and we're all coming to one boat that's coming across my bow, we can't turn people, you know.
Nobody can.
Nobody. I got cussed, one of the worst times I ever got cussed last year, because I cut to a guy's left and made him move. Well, there was a guy on each side of me. There was no way in the world. We all three had planer boards out, and he was the only boat coming across. It's like, come on, man, where do you want me to go? I'll be glad to go if you show me where. And I guarantee you, you'll be surprised how often you give somebody the way like that, and you'll catch a fish right next to them. And I don't love anything better than that. Gotta love it when that happens.
Any other questions? No. We put it away and start live bait fishing as fast as we can. Because believe me, it wears me out not Kim so much anymore, but them days it's cold, you know, and it's raining, you know. Springtime trolling, it gets you, especially when you're doing it twice every day for, you know, 30 days, you know. Yes, sir. The cut downs, yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
When you normally call weights under control, is there a water temperature?
As soon as we get a report where we can start catching or buying spot, we are done.
Okay.
I mean, you know, I would much rather catch a, you know, especially a decent sized rockfish or any rockfish on a spinner rod than I would a broomstick. You know what I mean?
Once those big fish are gone, we much prefer catching the 20s, 28s. Much prefer catching them on light tackle than
you know, when you're targeting, you know, them big trophy fish, you know, it's a needle in a haystack anymore, you know. So I know guys used to chum for them. And you could go out maybe catch a keeper or two chumming. I mean, I wouldn't discourage it, but you know, with us, you know, running 2 trips every day and our party's looking, you know, trying to put, you know, fish on, you know, in the box, we're gonna go out and do what we got to do and cover ground. And
one thing over the last 5 to 7 years, 8 years, we've had to pull planer boards deeper into the summer for some reason.
Yeah.
Because.
Good. Yes, sir.
Live line spot.
Yeah, Charlie's going to give us some, you know, we do, yes. Charlie's actually going to give us a seminar on that about 1:30, I think.
Yeah,
But when we get done, I'll talk to you on the side all you want. So, but any other questions on, you know, tackle setup or what we do or how we do it? So I always, when I make my tandem rigs, are 3 and 1.5. Now, my summertime tandem rigs are a little different. I actually like the, you know, like in the springtime, we try to get, you know, 2 or 3 ounces between the baits. Well, in the springtime, I'll run 2 baits of the same weight, and I'll put my sinker in the leading edge of the bottom bait, or the short bait. So typically, you know, it's still going to be 3 for the long, 1.5 for the short, but I'll put that sinker, you know, basically take 1.5, cut it in half, put your sinker in. Yes, sir.
Get more bites with the current or against the current? Yes.
Yes. Depends on the day. One day, you know, one day you can catch them going east and west. The next day you can catch them going north and south.
The thing is, a lot of that's about the speed. When you're going with the tide or against the tide. To be all honest with you, I'd rather go cross or angle on the tide than go directly with it.
Well, you know, you you get on that north or south wind and you're going across, not everybody, likes to rock in a boat back and forth. We got a pretty big boat, so it don't affect us as bad until it gets 2 or 3 foot. But typically we go against it if we could. But a lot of times when it's rough out, going with it too, you really got to slow down, because you're getting pushed. But going with it is a big thing too.
And that makes it tougher, especially on a small boat, because the waves affect you so much more than a real knob boat. But even on mine, you can feel that surge when that wave hits you from behind. And that's not, it will kind of make the bait look good, because if you've got air on there, it'll puff that bait. But a lot of times when it's real choppy, it's tough to catch. The other thing about fishing the trophy season is you got to be patient, fellas and ladies.
I was just getting ready to say, the biggest thing about trophy fishing, man, you got to have fun. Just, you're trophy hunting, it's
quality versus quantity.
If you get 1 or 2 bites and you get that 40-inch fish in, I can't tell you how many times, people get on the boat and you put one big fish in the box and it's the best trip they ever had in their life, because they've never seen a fish that big,
It's the same thing with Kobe.
Yeah. One other thing, and I know everybody probably knows, so I'm going to tell you anyway. Especially with these big fish, guys, don't try to net them from the tail. Always net them from the head first. I can't tell you, we try to get customers involved and let them put lines out, whatever. I can't tell you how many people try to chase that big fish, trying to swim off the depth. You're not going to move that net faster than that fish can swim. So
fish don't have a reverse.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, sir.
On the 45-degree angle you talk about, is that no matter what, weight, no weight?
It does.
It does. No, that's with weight. It's one rod, 20 ounces.
It doesn't
40,
have to
50 feet down.
It doesn't have to be 20 ounces. It can be 16, 10, whatever. It's got to have a weight on it. But to get to know how that rod works and the way that the look of it, you got to fish that same rod in the same place every day. It doesn't have to be in the front forward position. I mean, you can have it. I wouldn't put it on your planer board, but you can have it on the back corner boat rod and another rod sticking out, and where that line cuts that rod, just make a mental note where it cuts, where you got the bite.
Yeah, what Doug's saying, on a boat like mine, it's so long it cuts the boat. On a smaller boat, you have that rod sticking out. The one we use is straight out at about a 15-degree up angle, and it's about a 45-degree angle to the water. But on a small boat, it might be off the back of the boat 10, 15 feet. But if you see where it cuts that second rod, the next rod, put those 2 rods together the same way every time. Not so much the dead distance, but the rod. And you can see, and you put a couple pieces of tape on your rod about a 4-inch length, so that line cuts that 4-inch strip. Tape the top, tape the bottom, so that when that line cuts through that 4-inch line, your speed's right. And it doesn't matter where you turn. If you turn with the wind, against the wind, whatever, that line, you might have to pick the speed up a tad and lift it up from the bottom because you're going too slow. You might have to slow down a little bit because it's going up to the top of it. And and there's always variables. Every day they don't fight the same way every time. It's like I'm making a turn. You make a turn and the inside rod goes on. That's telling you that it bit a little bit deeper. So you got to maybe drop them back a little bit further.
Or slow down a little bit. Let's talk about like we run 3 long lines across the back, and one of the most asked questions I get on the boat is, well, you catch a fish on, say, your right corner. Well, how do you get it back out? Because you got all the other lines out. Okay, so like on our boat, and I'm sure a lot of boats where you have 2 or even 2 or 3, however many you have across the back. As you're trolling along, if it's straight, it's not that big of a deal. You get the bite, you get the fish in, but how often are you in a turn? Okay, and now your left corner is cutting this way. Well, how do you get your right corner back out? Real simple. You go over to your left corner, and you pick it up, and say your right corner was at 160, and your left corner was at 140. You pick that left corner up. As long as you stay in that turn, you pick that left corner up, drop it out to 160. That's now your right corner. You take that left, you bring it to the left side of your right one to the left side of the boat, and then you let it out. Because all your other lines are coming this way, and you're going to let this one. It's going to go straight out. It's going to fall right in line. Okay? Because if you're trying to let your right corner out and your left, you're in a turn, you're going to run into it every time. And And trust me, he's famous. I'll get halfway through it and he'll turn the other way, and it just.
And I don't care.
But the other thing, guys, if you ever have any questions, feel free to call. Charlie and I will watch you. We'll tell you what's going on, what we're doing, and anything we can do to help you.
We always, if you're just talking in general, start out, first time out, put your lines out somewhere around the vicinity of 3 knots. Now then you adjust accordingly. Once you get everything out, it's almost better to go a little fast, putting your rods out so that you get them out and they stay in position. But you want to keep the boat straight while you're doing this. When you put the long ones out, you always put the long rods out first.
Yeah.
Then you put the board rods out. Then the short rods on the boat go out. You never tangle up putting them out. Where you tangle up is on the very putting, like Doug was just explaining. When you're putting that long rod back out, you got to get it through 20 rods to get it back to the back.
And we don't get tangled up anyway. We're professional.
Yeah, we're professional. We never tangle up.
One other thing about
believe that, I'll tell you another story.
one other thing about the planer boards. How often? It doesn't happen often, but have you guys ever gotten a bite and the clip stretched out and it won't break? It won't come out of the clip. Have you ever had that? Yeah. You know how to fix that? You take that rod, it's got the fish on it. Nope. Well, you can, but what we do, you crank it up to the next clip, put that extra pressure on it, and snap it. But don't crank on it right away. Let it fall to the back of the boat. But that will pop it every time.
That'll get it around.
Especially in the summertime when them smaller fish can't pop that clip, We run all braid on our boards, especially on a rougher day. Them clips just don't hold. So we run in the springtime. We run number 64 blue water candy rubber bands and a carabiner, real quick. And in the summertime we drop down to 32s because the smaller fish can't quite break them bigger ones.
Okay, any more questions, guys? We got a few minutes. One thing you might want to know about the late spring, when we do have to, Scott haven't showed up yet, and we're still trolling for the rockfish, we will drop back to 50-pound leader if it seems like they're not biting real well.
One other thing I want to tell you, just mention, that we do run stinger hooks in our baits, and you're only allowed 1 hook per bait, but just so everybody knows, for YouTube, that's considered 1 hook. So it's not, in the springtime, I know some guys don't like getting stinger hooks, using stinger hooks, but I can't tell you, if you don't, how many times you'll get a bite and you'll come up and your shad will be wrapped around the hook like that. Oh yeah.
He's going to take it apart and show you.
I got to do it. Give me 1 second, I'll show you.
Then I'm going to tell you the right way.
We do have custom rigging going on today, just so everyone knows. And those parachutes that they're over there rigging, they do include that stinger hook.
Most important thing, guys, is we like fishing around open water. When there are crowds of boats, the more you're away from the boats, I think the better shot you got. The advantage to that is also you get turned around and go back to an area if you found the wrong bait. So when you're in the crowd, there's no turning around.
All right. What's that mean? Thank you. So one of the things that you got to remember about stinger hooks, most of the time we'll use an 8 or a 9/0 stinger hook. But the biggest thing you got to look at is make sure the eye of your stinger hook is big enough to go over the eye of your lure. Can't tell you how many times I've bought, you just in a hurry, you buy 8/0 stinger hooks, and all of a sudden, you got a 10/0 hook in your bait, and oh man, they're not going to work because they won't go over the eye. So that's just something, everybody see that? All right. So what I like to do, Charlie tell you to do it totally different, but I'll tell you how I do it. I lay that shad up under there like that, and I pinch it because that's where I want the hook to come out. Run through the nose, come out the top. All right. Now you can see what I'm talking about. about the stinger hook. When that fish bites it, he's got all that bait to grab and not get nowhere near that hook. All right?
One thing we do like to also is keep them shallow.
Yeah.
So as much as that hook is exposed as possible.
Yep. So, again, Charlie's going to show you different, but I'm going to show you how I do it. I like to lay that hook up there like that, pinch it. That's about where I want it to come out, and I go right to the back of that hook. I come in with it. Come back out the top. Now, Charlie would tell you to put this hook in first. That way you can run this one in. But that's a good way to hook yourself, in my opinion. But that's just me. But then you just bend it. You flatten it down. All right. Now, I'm going to tell you, some guys worry about having that little piece of your hook sticking out right there. But I got news for you. If he gets that close to see that, it's too late for him. Right? Because it's going to be covered by the hair anyway. All right. Now, if you want to get technical and all pretty and stuff, you know, by all means, hide it, but you don't have to.
The only difference that I do is I'll take the bait. Now you see it's jammed up against the head. Okay, I'll do that first. I'll lay that shad up against the head and I'll pinch it right where that hook comes out. So without this hook, I'd put the stinger in and have the circle, the eye come right there. Then I'll bring it down through the head and come right up through the eye. Does it really make a difference? No. But I like to make him think it does.
Ask him whose side catches more fish.
Oh, we all know that.
It's all mine now. Both sides.
Yes.
You guys probably know this day in and day out, but is there a good way to keep track of your weights of your baits? Like, can you rate the weight of your shad? Will that mess up the fish?
I'll be honest with you. I've been doing this my whole life, and I can look at it and tell what it is. But right there on the bottom there, I would just write 8. You know, 8, 10, 6, whatever it is. I mean, yeah, it's not going to hurt anything. I mean, you can even write it in your mouth. You know, 8 or 6 or whatever.
As long as you have a couple inches difference.
I'll tell you what I've seen.
A couple ounces difference.
I'll tell you what I've seen for the weights, you know, like your inline weights and all, especially in the summertime. A lot of guys, you familiar with that rubber coating that you put on like pliers? A lot of guys do all your 10 ounces blue and all your 8 ounces yellow and all your 16 ounces black and, you know, your 20s green and blue or something, you know, something like that. But again, just I can look at them and tell, but it's just whatever makes it easy for you.
If you like it the way I was when they used to call it the keep it simple stupid method, the KISS method.
That's right.
Keep it simple stupid. When you're doing the double rigs like that, as long as there's a couple ounces difference so that the line stays spread out, that's all you're worried about. You can go 8 and a 2, a 6 and a 4.
Tell you one other thing about
and with us, like Doug said, we're pulling 28 rods.
30
So
rods.
an ounce here or there on one of the rods is going to make a great big deal of difference. And the same thing with you. If you're pulling 10, 12 rods and you got the planer boards out and all that, it's not that, you know, you don't have to be so precise on every little thing. The main thing is to go out there and have fun.
Yeah, that's right.
Enjoy yourself.
One other thing that about the tandem rigs, I will tell you that I do see once in a while. Remember I said earlier, I use the least amount of terminal tackle that I can. You know, I see a lot of guys put these tandem rigs together and they'll have a snap clip here and a snap clip here and a snap clip here. You don't need all that. Just simple tie it. And you know, I've actually seen guys put the snap clips right on to the baits. Tie your baits direct, guys. They'll swim better. They won't roll around that, you know, the clevis. But the least amount of terminal tackle, it's the least amount of failure, especially if you don't fish every day. You know, you're out there in the salt water, you spray them off, you throw them down in your cabin or in your garage or wherever, and then all of a sudden, you know, you get something rusty or, you know what I mean, next thing you know, it breaks. So we try to prevent that as much as possible. The single baits, like I said, I just like the wind on leaders. Anybody don't know how to do that, I'd be happy to show you how I do it. It's pretty simple, but I think it's a lot easier, a lot cleaner too, and it'd save you money on terminal tackle. Not that, you know, you shouldn't use it at all, but the least amount is your best friend. Anything you can tie direct, in my opinion.
I definitely agree with that. Less stuff that can fail, the better. Anytime.
That's right.
One thing just to will leave you alone. When we catch a fish, the first thing Doug, he showed you the comb earlier, that's true to form. Take care of your baits. You get back at the end of the day and the bay might be a little muddy, you might have a storm, be a little muddy. You might see some boats start to gang up, usually around the head of the bait. When you get back to the dock, take a hose and just squirt it, blast it.
Yep.
The hair will get all tangled up and twisted up. Hold the bait up and brush it out, and then put it back out.
Yep.
Now, when you go to get it back out, sometimes you'll see it, you know, if it's dry, it'll be clump like this or clump like that. If you take your hand on that, next time you go to use it, put that hair in your hand and just do like that, it'll fluff out just as pretty as it pleases.
Yep.
And all it is the salt water's holding it together. You rub it like that, it'll be spread right out. Or drop it in the water. As soon as you drop it in the water, it'll straighten itself right out.
Now, like Charlie said,
Keep it clean, keep it neat looking.
at the end of the day, all of our baits get washed. Sometimes we use Dawn soap, but my favorite, again, you're going to laugh, is Suave coconut conditioner. Don't ask me why, but rockfish like coconuts seem to be. And it makes the cabin smell not like fish at the end of the day, too, you know, after you hang everything up. But it makes a big difference. Keep your baits clean, guys.
I make him spray some of
I
these
can't,
fish.
yeah, I can't tell you enough for, you know, in the springtime, got to keep your baits clean. Them jellyfish get on there, you know, everybody knows what I'm talking about. You pull your baits on, it's a big hunk of, you know, jellyfish on there. You haven't had a bite all day, and you're going like, man, I wonder how long that was like that. I mean, there's been days, Charlie, I tell you, that I pulled the whole rig in multiple times on the trip. Start on one side, start on the other. But it's what you got to do. You know, it
Generally speaking, that's getting towards the end of May and when they start showing up with the,
Yep.
we call them snots,
Yep.
just nasty looking jellies. But if you take nothing else away, I hope anybody have any questions about the speed and all that? If you take nothing else away from today's seminar, that's what you need to do. You need to get that speed and keep that speed consistent.
Doesn't matter how pretty your baits are, doesn't matter how good your equipment is, you don't have your speed right, you're not right. Speed is 100% the name of the game.
Any other questions, anybody? About anything else, if you're not going to be here the rest of the day, we're here at the table for a while. Feel free to stop by and talk to you.
Thank you guys so much. We're really happy. These people are going to be here with us for quite a bit today. So we're super thankful. We have a ton of stuff going on here. We've got all sorts of tables, vendors set up, and then of course our big sales inside. So thank you guys again.
Thank you guys.
Have a good one out there.